بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Continuing manzilat at-Tadhakur wa Tafakkur, we come to the last three, or we began last week the some habits that taint the heart, and they were excessive socializing and wishful thinking, or unhealthy wishful thinking. We have three more left, inshallah, and the third is at-ta'alluq bi ghayrillah, being attached or dependent upon other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this is a nuanced issue that some people, when they don't fully understand the definitions or the concepts, it can become confusing. But Ibn al-Qayyim says that هذا أعظم مفسدات على الإطلاق. This is the greatest poison to the heart, without comparison. Being attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in our times today, Ibn al-Qayyim didn't have this, but in our times today we have the science of psychology, which I refer to a lot. And I think we can better appreciate the harm of being attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the various theories of psychology and the philosophies of psychology. I will try and do my best to elaborate on, and not go into the psychology of it, but just the idea behind it. There are several verses which talk about this, some of which include وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزًّا. And they took gods besides Allah, who they thought will bring them nobility and dignity and honor and strength. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لَعَلَّهُمْ يُنصَرُونَ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ نَصْرَهُمْ وَهُمْ لَهُمْ جُنْدٌ مُحْضَرُونَ. And they took gods besides Allah, believing that those gods, those deities, will support them and give them aid and strength. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refused that and says, they don't have the ability, meaning the deities do not have the ability to aid you or assist you. And in a final verse, or third verse, لا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فتقعد مذموما مخذولا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding the Prophet ﷺ, and us being followers of the Prophet, this is talking to us as well. Do not take deities besides Allah, because that will result in you becoming madhmoom, is blameworthy, and makhdula, and a failure. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Quran is telling us of the negative consequences of having a God besides Allah. Now, if you remember in the very, I believe, first or second session, we spoke about the meaning of Allah, the name Allah. What does it mean? And just to refresh our minds, the word Allah, or the name Allah, comes from the root al-ilah, ilah, right? And ilah from the root verb alaha, and the Arabs would use this verb to describe a baby camel when it was first born, or when it's first born, and how it reacts or how it acts. So we've seen on National Geographic, a deer is born, it starts struggling as it tries to walk, but about 30 seconds later it learns how to walk, right? Whereas our little babies, they take a year or so to finally get the habit of it, and several times they bump their head on the floor and whatever, right? SubhanAllah, that indicates a different type of relationship with children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made our relationship with children different. It requires a lot more attention and care and love, but that's a different topic. So the baby camel gets up, starts wobbling a little bit, and as soon as it teaches itself how to walk, what does it do? It goes right under its mommy, and it tries to suckle, a little bit of milk, and it just stays there. Why? Because it knows and it acknowledges that everything it needs is with its mom. Its protection, its love, its nourishment, whatever, all of it is with its mom. Therefore, it only sees its mom, it sees absolutely nothing else. The world is not there, the world is its mother, that's it, right? So the relationship here was described by the verb, or referred to by the verb alaha. With time, that verb then became used to refer to worship. So linguistically, alaha means to worship. And ilah is that which is worshipped. So when you look at the etymology of this term, really the concept of a god, of a divine, to the Arabs, it goes back to a type of relationship, right? A type of relationship where the person recognizing an entity as being superior in its attributes and its capabilities, develops a relationship with it where it only sees it and it sees nothing else, right? That's how powerful the relationship is. That if I need something, I go to it and it takes care of me, right? So Allah, the name Allah is coming from that. It's initially referring to that relationship where we're supposed to be attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way where we know Allah and that's enough for us. Everything else is just, we are following the commands of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us. But in terms of our hardship, our needs, our wants, all of that is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is under His decree, and He is the one who's capable of helping us attain it, achieve it, obtaining it, or gifting it to us without prior work, through dua, etc. So, this is a very healthy relationship, when a person becomes attached to Allah, or strongly attached to Allah, and there's a type of healthiness to that, where if a person goes through a financial hardship, or they're going through health issues, they're having trouble with their kids, they're having trouble with their spouse, whatever it might be, they're having trouble with their education, tests, whatever the age is, whatever the situation is, whatever the time period is, whatever the geographical region is, right? The person feels that Allah is capable of doing all things, and therefore all I need is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's it. This is the idea of tawakkul, right? This is where it comes from. So being attached to that is healthy. Being attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that regard is healthy. Why? Now here's the question, right? If you want to understand why being dependent on other than Allah is unhealthy, we need to understand why being dependent on Allah is healthy. Why is that? Because Allah is capable of doing that. Allah is capable of changing our situation. He's capable of answering our dua. He's capable of getting us out of a financial hardship. Therefore, that relationship is not in vain, right? The relationship bears its fruit in manners that, we never expect, in ways that we never even fathomed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings this point in the Quran when He says the very beautiful verse, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Whoever depends on Allah, right, or whoever is conscious of Allah, right, they have that relationship with Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take them out of, or make them a way out of anything, any hardship, any problem. Allah will make them a way out. And He says He will provide them in a manner that they never expected. Now, why is it they never expected? Why is Allah making this point here? Because if we never expected it, then we know that's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that is the gift coming from Allah. That is Allah's aid coming to us. Whereas if we expected it, well, yeah, I'm expecting the stock to go up, and it went up, it's okay. We might not see Allah's decree in that. We might not see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's assistance coming through that. Even though it is there, but it's harder to see. But when it comes from an angle that we never expected, right, then we know, that's when we're taken. This is when that event pierces the heart and it shakes it, right, and says, here's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala coming to your aid. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who is capable of answering the supplication of the one in despair, or the desperate dua. Someone who's in a desperate situation, there is nothing that they can do. They are cornered, they are locked, there is absolutely nothing more they can do. It's either failure or death, right? Sometimes it could be that difficult, right? Or it's just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's aid. That type of dua that's coming from the heart, that just pierces the seven skies, as some hadith narrate, and goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who can answer the dua of such a person, or such a dua? To put a little bit more flavor to this, the pagans of Mecca, they had this type, pagans in general, when they are in a dire situation, And the example the Quran gives a few times is when someone is in the ocean and a storm comes and their ship, they lose control of their ship. And now they are under the mercy, of course, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but under the mercy of the waves. A wave could come and just flip the ship over, and that's it, they're done. They have absolutely no control, absolutely nothing. At this point, the Quran describes even the pagans as reaching out to Allah. They forget all their gods, right? And they only call out to Allah. Why? Because they know at that point none of those gods can help them. And the reason Allah makes this point is because if they can't help you, why do you worship them in the first place? If they are limited in what they can offer you, why be attached to them in the first place when Allah is there and you know Him? You could be attached to Him. If He's capable of doing all that you claim that your gods can do, right, and in a more effective and better manner, then why go to them in the first place? So this verse is saying, who can answer that dua? Allah. Then all we need is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah goes beyond what we expect. It's not just He answers the dua and saves us from that situation, right? But also, وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He makes you the successors on earth. Meaning, when Allah answers the dua of such a person, He doesn't just save them and they go back to the ocean or they go back to the shore and that's it, they go about their lives. He answers the dua, alleviates the stress and the pain, and gives them sustenance in a manner where they become stronger than they were before. It's not like, for example, I'm going to help you with this, I'll change your tire and then, have a nice day, you can drive home. Allah goes above and beyond and saying, forget the car, here's a new car, brand new car, you don't have to worry about the tires, right? He gives you more stability, He embeds you more in life so that you are self-sustaining, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes above and beyond. Why is it important to attach ourselves to Allah and not to other than Him? Because Allah is worthy of being attached to. Allah is worthy of depending on Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because He is capable of doing all that we need, all that we want, all that we ask. Whereas these other gods cannot. Right? So when a person becomes attached to other than Allah, they are putting their trust, their heart. When you love something so much and it fails you, that hurts. That hurts a lot, right? Because the heart is now involved. And when the heart is involved, there's this attachment, the emotional attachment. It has a place in the heart. And if it's gone, or, it's hostile, for example, or does something to harm the heart, that's painful, right? So being attached to these gods, these false deities, does exactly that to the heart. A person might be calling, I need this, and I need that, I need this, I need that, and no answer, because they can't hear them in the first place. And even if they can hear them, they can't answer. There's nothing they can do, right? So the heart becomes attached to lies, and it's very, very harmful to the heart. It really deteriorates, it breaks it down, it kills it. And it's, subhanAllah, it's something that we don't want. Now, as Muslims, alhamdulillah, we have the root and the foundation of that healthy attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But also as human beings, right, we are imperfect. And there are certain attachments in the heart that are harming us in one way or another. Right? Sometimes people love their spouse so much, right? And there's a type of dependence on the spouse. Now, it's not haram, right? I'm not saying that this is theologically problematic. But in terms of iman, right, it can be, it can restrain iman to an extent. It can limit a person's iman, and it can backfire sometimes, because again, if the spouse does something, that you don't like, it hurts, or the spouse is unable to, fulfill one of your needs, for example. It can backfire. It can hurt. Also, if a person is overly attached to something or someone, they become a type of slave to it. This happens a lot sometimes, or this happens sometimes in marriages. The wife really, really loves her husband, but the husband is a toxic husband. He's harmful to her. And she tries her best to try and always keep the relationship together and keep it together, because there's this type of attachment she has to him, but he doesn't have to her. And it's just stabbing the heart day in and day out, and day in and day out, right? But if that same person, divorce might not be an option, let's just say. but an option to free themselves from those shackles is becoming more and more attached to Allah, where it's not my husband who's bringing me the food, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's bringing me the food through my husband. That's very different. It might seem, oh, well, yeah, I understand that, but do we actually view it that way? Do we view the world this way? If my husband, my spouse, is a means which Allah gave me, right? Then it's about my attachment to Allah. I'm not going to go to my husband and say, oh, my husband, I need this and I need that. I'm going to say, oh, Allah, help me with this and help me with that. That's not to say that we don't take the necessary measures in order to obtain something, right? But it's quite a different thing. If my husband fails me, for example, but I see that as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restricting him from providing me something, well, I trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when something's good for me, He provides it for me. And when something's bad for me, He restrains it from me. So it's no longer my husband did this for me, my husband did that for me. It's rather Allah provided me, Allah didn't provide me, but both are positive. Right? Both are positive. So when the heart becomes more and more attached to Allah, by default it becomes disattached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because these other relationships, these other bonds are no longer necessary. They become volatile, they become really unnecessary, outdated. Well, if I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one providing me, right, then this boss of mine, he's just a means, that's it. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in control, not him. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala providing me, not him. So I don't have to be overly concerned about pleasing him at the expense of my own dignity, for example. Right? For example. Rather, Allah is the one providing me. I don't need to give up my principles in order to remain, financially stable. Allah is the one providing me in the first place. So if Allah is providing me now, while I sustain and stay true to my principles, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always provide me. It's not so-and-so, X, Y, and Z who are providing me. It's Allah. And this is freedom. This is freedom, right? Because you become free from all those other bonds and relationships that truly shackles you. Again, going back to the same example, the boss example. If a person views that their boss is in control of their financial stability, that's very problematic. Because now the person's concern is going to be, is my boss happy with me or not happy with me? I need to do this for my boss. Right? And that can start harming other relationships with your spouse or your children, for example. Right? The person becomes overly committed to their job. Why? Out of fear of losing the job. Right? So a person becomes imprisoned by other people without even realizing it. When a person is attached to Allah, that is true freedom, because it starts breaking these shackles. Everything I have is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything I need is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else is just a means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using to provide me. That's it. Right? So if my boss is upset with me, it doesn't matter, because if Allah is happy with me, then He will always give me my provisions. I'm okay. Right? And if I am unable to take care of my children, if I am unable to guide my children, well, I have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to who has control of their hearts. Can change any situation, subhanAllah. And you see some really, really, really interesting things. Sometimes, I've come across situations where, it seems like an impossible task. The person's never going to change, right? All of a sudden, the person changes 180 degrees. What the heck happened, right? It cannot be except a dua. It cannot be but a dua, right? You see this when people accept Islam. The biggest enemies of Islam. It's not uncommon for major enemies of Islam to accept Islam in the end. Subhanallah, right? What can we say except that the one whose heart is in His hand, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the one who changes the heart in the first place, right? So being attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true freedom. This is the freedom we need to teach our children in our community. Not the freedom to do whatever the heck you want. Right? Because when the heart becomes attached to these things, it becomes enslaved to it. And what's interesting, by the way, is when you study autonomy at the philosophical level, the scholarly level, right? They will bring about that being a slave does not contradict autonomy. Meaning a person can be a slave and be autonomous at the same time. These are philosophers speaking, right? But in culture, the meaning of autonomy and freedom is quite different than what the scholars teach, right? Just to keep that in mind. When a person is attached to Allah, they attain their freedom because they fortify themselves in three ways. By being attached to Allah, it is impossible for Allah to fail you. It is impossible for Allah to fail you. So you are fortifying yourself with a guarantee that if you reach out to Allah, if you make dua to Allah, Allah will hear it. And He will answer it one way or another, at one time or another. It's not a matter of Allah is going to answer my dua or not, right? It's a matter of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer it. So you fortify yourself with a guarantee. Whereas other individuals might say, I got your back, don't worry about it. I guarantee you, I'll take care of you if you ever need help. But they might fail you, right? It might be that they are sincere in what they say, but they are incapable of helping you. Right? They want to help you, but they just don't have the means or the ability to help you. So you fortify yourself, you free yourself with a guarantee. Number two, nothing can intervene between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing can take it away. Why? Because the relationship with Allah is coming from where? The heart. It's not a tangible thing. It's not something a person can put their hand on and take it away or steal or harm. It's completely in your control. And that's freedom. Because now your own fate is in your hands. Because you can make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change any situation. No one can interfere, no one can intervene. No one can break that relationship between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah. I mean, look at, for example, when you study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran referenced this sometimes. That they try to make plots and plans, strategies, propaganda to try and dissuade people from accepting Islam. Allah's response is, قُلْ إِنَّ الْهُدَى هُدَى اللَّهِ. Guidance is the guidance of Allah. He gives it to whom He pleases. No one can harm that. No one can affect it. If Allah wants to guide someone, He will guide them. No matter how much propaganda is out there. Look at 9/11, for example. 9/11 was a major strategy to portray Islam in a very negative way and smear its reputation. Yet, what was the result? An increase in the amount of people accepting Islam. It's really interesting. Why? To let everyone know guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot take that away from anyone. Allah wants to guide, He guides. And if someone seeks guidance, no amount of propaganda can change that. Because it's a dua, right? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving it to that person. So they fortify themselves by keeping their own realities, their own fate, their situation in their own hands. No one can interfere with that. And there's a third impossibility. So it's impossible for anyone it's impossible for Allah to fail you. It is impossible for anyone to interfere in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a third impossibility. Anyone remember it? So we spoke about this before. What was it? Allahumma salli wa sallam, la ilaha illallah, third impossibilities. Maybe I'll remember it as the lecture goes on. But there's a third one. In the end, what I'm trying to say is that when a person has a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, it's a guaranteed thing, and it's freedom, and it is truly healthy for the heart. And the opposite of that is the direct opposite of what we've been talking about. So, at-ta'alluq bi ghayrillah, being attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is unhealthy for the heart. So do be careful of that. In fact, it's the most unhealthy thing, or the unhealthiest thing that you could do to your heart. Be careful of that, and always try and break these, or always try and learn and develop your attachment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, enhance it, strengthen it, and by default, it will start breaking these other shackles. The fourth harm to the heart, or the fourth unhealthy habit for the heart, is excessive eating. Right? Now nowadays, people are becoming more and more aware with this reality. I remember when I was younger, and I'm sure you remember this, whenever you look at a menu, they never brought how many calories, right, a meal has. Now, even the smallest fast food restaurant or chain has this. Is the amount of calories you're intaking with this meal, right? It's this type of awareness now that eating too much is very harmful. And in other areas of the world, for example, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the Gulf countries are ranked the highest in terms of obesity. And the reason is because they're simply unaware. They're unaware of unhealthy eating habits. What you find at 1 o'clock in the morning, they have a very greasy, fattening meal, an entire dinner, and then they go to sleep. They just don't know, right? But now they're becoming more and more aware. They don't know of the negative consequences of not, if you eat a lot, then you have to exercise in order to keep balance. Right? They were just unaware. So as excessive eating has negative harms on the physical body, it also has negative harms on the heart as well, the spiritual part of the body and the psyche. And Ibn Qayyim categorizes this in a few ways. First is unhealthy eating habits based on eating that which is haram, right? Haram for the sake of Allah. So something that is haram for the sake of Allah is, for example, a carcass, dead meat, something that is dead before being slaughtered. That is forbidden, as the Quran says. Pork, swine, is unhealthy. So, it's forbidden. Why is it forbidden? This is an interesting question. And I think more research now in neuropsychology, in the field of neurobiology, I've heard research that suggests that when you eat something, during the digestion process, the body releases certain fumes, I guess, that goes to the brain and affects the brain. And upon hearing this, I asked the individual, I said, that saying that we heard our grandmother saying, you are what you eat, is that true? He said, yes. He said, yes. Because he was talking about it from an angle of fasting. Why is fasting healthy, not only to the body, but to the mind as well, right? And we know the benefits of fasting in the Sharia, right? The Prophet ﷺ says that, fasting, so Sharia suggests that when you fast, it limits your desires. It restrains it. Okay? So meaning, when you eat, it gives a type of energy to the body, which makes it more active in terms of its desires. It strengthens the desires, right? So the Sharia suggests this notion, but modern research is starting to really make it more and more a more and more developed idea and philosophy. So I'm posing the question here. I'm not drawing any conclusions, right? Now, I've read this before, even in the books of Ibn Qayyim. So this is not a new phenomenon. People noticed this 700 years ago, and maybe even prior to that, that the type of animal a person eats affects their behavior, right? So when a person, for example, the Bedouins eat a lot of camel meat. Now, camels are rough and very jealous, and they don't forget. They have trouble forgetting, right? Meaning, if you harm it in a way, it never forgets, and it resents you. An interesting story. So when a Bedouin wanted to slaughter a camel, a baby camel, and when they do that, they take it away from its mother so the mother doesn't see, right? He took the camel away, the baby camel, and slaughtered it. After slaughtering it, he noticed that the mother was looking. Now, the Bedouin knows the behavior of camels. So he knew that the mother camel was going to try and kill him. What did he do? He entered his tent at night, took off his outer garment, and went from under the tent and left in a manner that the mother didn't see. So the mother saw him enter, but he snuck out, right? What did the camel end up doing? It went to the tent and started stomping the tent until it saw his gown there. Excuse me. So they have this type of resentment and this harshness in their behavior. Bedouins are like that. They're harsh, and they have this resentment. They don't forget. You do something wrong, they don't forget. They might overlook it. Right? They might have a little bit of forbearance, but they won't forget. You did that time. And and it's not just the person who doesn't forget. I'm talking about generation after generation. And they're just saying that أحقاد يلحق أحفاد. The Arabic language is saying that resentment follows even grandchildren and grandchildren and their grandchildren. When two tribes are at war, right, or there's difference between them, a situation happened, I mean, that resentment follows generation after generation. I know the Afghani community and other communities, this is still present, right? 1,000 years ago, one of your guys did something to one of our guys, and we're still at war 1,000 years later. SubhanAllah, right? This happens. For example, and then another example is lamb and goat meat. So lamb, sheep, they're a very blessed kind of animal. They're very blessed in that they're very soft, they're easy to control, they multiply quickly. So a person gains a lot of money through them. And they're quiet, they're easy to deal with. So you find that someone who eats a lot of lamb, they develop this. Now again, I'm posing the question, right? And just to add a joke to that. So when we were talking about this once in Jordan, some guy said, so that's why Jordanians are always, bickering amongst one another. Why is that? Because we always eat chicken. And chicken always cluck, 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 and they're always fighting, right? So that's why, right? Now, to what extent is this true, right? We don't know. It needs research. But I'm posing the question. And perhaps more and more research will shed light on whether or not this is true and how true it is. And if it is true, it will tell us why certain meats are forbidden. Why are we not allowed to eat meat of predator animals? We're not allowed to eat a lion, or lion meat, or tiger meat, or meat of a falcon or a hawk or an eagle. Why? Because they're predators. They have a type of nature that's aggressive, violent, and we don't want to take that on, right? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a certain meat forbidden, it's because it has negative consequences to us. It's not just biological. It could also be spiritual and mental, psychological. And you have forbidden food, not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that particular meat or item forbidden, but because it was attained in a forbidden manner. So sometimes a person might steal food from someone else, right? You might think, who steals food? Maybe in America, but a few months ago we went down to Mexico for the Corazon project, where we build a home for a needy family, right? When we enter that region, it's a very poor region, right? I've been to Jordan. I've been to the poorest parts of Jordan, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as what I saw in Tijuana, or this area of Tijuana. Homes literally don't have windows or doors, meaning anyone can enter. So as a result, people would enter the home when the family isn't there and take all the food and leave, right? So they made it a habit where a person only brings enough food for that day, so that's not stolen. So it can happen. Sometimes people will steal food, so that's forbidden, and that's harmful to the body because now they are eating something that is forbidden. Also, you have a type of excessive eating, and that is, as the word suggests, excessive. You're eating more than what you need. Al-israf, as they say in the Arabic language. Eating a lot of something that is permissible. Again, for us nowadays, we're becoming more and more aware of this. Don't eat a lot of cake. It's not good for you, right? Don't eat a lot of fast food. It's not good for you. That is the biological or the medical side of it. How about the spiritual side? What happens? What happens is when a person excessively eats, it creates creates a type of laziness. They become lazier. Their sleep becomes heavier. Also, as I mentioned before, it strengthens their desires. And when a person has laziness and they sleep a lot and they're more prone to their desires, or desires are stronger, these are three gateways of the shaitan to a person. Meaning a shaitan can influence a person more through these three things. Or they can distract them from Allah through these three things. When a person sleeps a lot, they lose time. And time is very valuable in Islam. Excuse me. time is very valuable because all we have is time. That is a something that we possess that if it passes, we can never regain. Money comes and goes. Money comes and even spouses come and go. Let's just be real here, right? Divorce happens, sucks, it's terrible. It's not the end of the world. I don't believe in this 1 in a million, right? There are many, inshallah, suitable spouses for a person. Again, it's not that we become careless. Oh, okay, whatever. If you go away, I'll get someone else. It's not what I mean here, but it's not the end of the world. But when time passes, it can never be regained. And when we say time passes, let's put things into perspective here. On the Day of Judgment, when a person looks at their book of deeds and they see the difference in levels, in the size of paradise, because of one deed, right? We will regret every moment that passed by in our life that we didn't utilize for dhikr, for example, or for getting us closer to Allah, or increasing our ranks. And if saying subhanallah is 10 hasanat, is 10 good deeds, right? How much more do you get in paradise with 10 good deeds? We will, if we can make 10 extra dollars in a day, not in an hour, in a day, we would go for it. Hey, you know what? It'll add up, right? 10 extra hasanat is a lot of difference. So when time passes, we don't use wisely, right? It's not, we didn't just lose a few seconds or a few moments of our life that we could utilize as something better, right? Do something useful with your life. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a second that on the Day of Judgment we will wish we utilized better, right? We will wish that it increased our level in paradise. When we lose a moment of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or worshiping Allah, we lost something for eternity. Not just something we could have used for a nicer meal. We lose something for eternity. Because subhanallah is a tree in paradise, or a plant in paradise. A plant that stays with you forever, for eternity. I mean, that's a big difference. So, when we sleep more than what we need, and when we become lazy, or we become distracted by our desires, because when someone has their desires are on their mind, it's very distracting and it really sucks energy, especially for the youth. They want to get married, and I see this in the youth so much. I want to get married. Why do they want to get married? They have certain emotions that need to be taken care of, that they want to express, right? And that requires a spouse by Islam, right? And they're so distracted by this, they're so overpowered by this, right? That it can harm their iman. And a lot of times what happens is, the youth come up to me sometimes, and I've even seen this. They're 16, 17, I want to get married. I'm ready to get engaged, right? Now as parents, you're like, what are you doing, right? Because you know what marriage means. You know what it requires, right? And you know that they're not ready. Financially, they're not ready, and in terms of maturity, they're not ready as well. And you're right to say that. But to them, they're so overpowered by their desire that they need this, and they try to get it through the halal way. But a lot of time, most of the time, that ends up not happening. And a few times, unfortunately, they'll end up, caving into their desires and seeking their needs in a forbidden manner, right? So it's detrimental to the heart, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ teaches us, whoever can get married, then they shall get married. This whole notion of, I'm still studying and I'm still doing this, still doing that, they become in the early 30s before they get married. That's not the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If a person has the ability to get married, they should get married. And then have tawakkul on Allah that things will work out. I know people who, they continue studying after getting married. It's doable, even with a child. And I know my cousin's wife had 3 children while she was studying dentistry, and then after she finished her dentistry, she specialized, and she was successful, right? So it can be, yes, it's very tiring, but it can be done. So for the parents, please don't tell your kids that, oh, it's too early for marriage, do that. If a proper individual comes, as the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man atakum tardawna dinahu wa khuluqahu fazawwiju." Whoever comes to you and you are pleased with their piety and their manners, then marry them, right? Don't say, oh, she still needs to finish college. You have these things in marriage, and this is something, inshallah, this is a good topic that I'll do, inshallah. Marriage and placing conditions on a person's marriage. You have the right to do that. A lady, a bride can put a condition in her marriage that I want to continue my studies after marriage. And he must honor that, right? We do need to raise awareness for this. Inshallah, I'll do a topic on that for the community. Anyway, so the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever is able to get married, then they should get married. If you are unable to get married, meaning a person not financially capable or whatever other reasons, then they should fast. Why? Because it'll suppress a person's desires and make it more, give them the ability to endure the struggles of not being able to get married. So as excessive eating has negative harms has harms on the body, the physical body, it also has harms on the psychology, the psyche of a person, and their iman. So a person does need to be careful. And the Prophet ﷺ says, مَا مَلَأَ آدَمِيٌّ وِعَاءً شَرًّا مِنْ بَطْنِهِ بحسب ابن آدم لقيمات يقمن صلبه فإن كان لابد فاعلا فثلث لطعامه وثلث لشرابه وثلث لنفسه. The Prophet ﷺ says, the worst thing the son of Adam or a human being can fill is their stomach. The worst thing that they can fill is their stomach. It is enough for a child of Adam to eat a few bites. Well, we will say today, 1 meal per day. That's enough, right? But if a person has to eat a little bit more, then they should eat in third portions. 1/3 of your stomach should be food, 1/3 for water, and 1/3 should be empty for your ability to breathe, right? You know how when you eat a lot or you eat a very heavy meal, you have trouble breathing, right? So this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he's teaching us. Now, if someone wants to study this from a secular angle and or from nutritious angle, whatever field is proper, then I'm sure you could find a lot of good in this hadith. You could probably build a nice master's thesis on this. And I hope, if there isn't already research on this, but we should be careful on our eating habits because it doesn't just affect our physical body, it affects our iman as well. This whole notion of 5 meals a day, 5 small meals a day, right? I think 5 is a little bit broad, but at least they're reducing the amount you're eating. You should eat 5 small meals a day, right? Instead of 3 big meals, 5 small meals. And even other researchers have told me that they tell their patients the most important thing when it comes to eating is not to fill yourself and walk 15 minutes a day. Eat whatever you want, but don't stuff yourself. Don't eat till you're full and walk 15 minutes a day to kind of get that energy moving. Finally, the fifth unhealthy habit for iman or for the heart is kathratun nawm, sleeping excessively, because it kills the heart and it weakens the body and it wastes time, and it also causes the person to become heedless and lazy. I touched on this a little bit, but it kills the heart. Why? Because it kills motivation, really. Look at the successful people. If you want to truly see this in play, look at the very successful people. What time do they get up? 5:45, 5:30, I've heard 4:30, right? But very early in the morning. And, they probably get 4 to 6 hours of sleep a day. Now, I'm not suggesting 4 to 6, that might be a little bit too much. And these successful people might be a little bit older, right? Past the age of 55, you don't need as much sleep. 6 hours, less than 6 hours is suffices, right? But the fact of the matter is, there's something about the morning, and the Prophet ﷺ mentions this. Barakah, he says that my ummah, the barakah of my ummah is in its morning, the early hours. So whenever a person wakes up in the morning and stays up after Fajr, I've experienced this before. I'm able to accomplish a lot more in the early hours than after. Prior to noon, right, I could do a lot more. As soon as noon hits, if you feel like the day it's just very downhill after that, right? So reducing the amount of sleep. Now, I don't know of a hadith that mentions how much a person should sleep. Scholars have mentioned 8 hours, right? So what scholars have referenced before or mentioned or suggested before is similar to what's being promoted today. For someone under the age of 55, they need around 7 to 9 hours of sleep, right? Whatever. Some people might differ and whatnot, but I haven't personally come across a hadith that mentions a specific amount, or the Prophet ﷺ used to sleep a specific amount of hours. But excessive sleeping is very harmful, and especially when excessive sleeping distracts someone from praying Fajr in the masjid for the males out there, or it distracts them or causes them not to pray Qiyam al-Layl, right? Tahajjud prayer, praying at night. Also, not sleeping enough is harmful for the body as well as it is harmful for a person's iman. So the Prophet ﷺ was approached by some companions who were concerned about their iman. What happened was that they noticed that when they were with the Prophet ﷺ, they feel a surge of iman. It was so strong. They felt like paradise is in front of them, hellfire is in front of them. They were so engaged in iman that they could taste it, they could feel it, right? But when they would go back home, they're distracted with their family, they're playing with their kids, they're doing what any human being does. And they feel like they lost that iman. So the companions were concerned that this is a sign of hypocrisy. So they went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, this is what happened to us. So the Prophet ﷺ makes a suggestion. He says, leave an hour for Allah, an hour for yourself, and an hour for your family, right? Have these portions, be healthy. And in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ advises Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, who, subhanAllah, his father, Amr ibn al-As, asked his daughter-in-law, how is Abdullah with you? And the manners that they had back then is something that, we're not even close to. She said, what a noble person. He prays all night and fasts all day. What a beautiful man, right? Now, Amr ibn al-As is a very, very clever individual. He recognized, he realized that she's not praising him, she's actually complaining. Meaning, he's praying all night, he doesn't give me time. He's fasting all day, he doesn't give me time. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, my son is doing this, can you please advise him? So he called Abdullah, and I'm paraphrasing here, and he told him, your body has a right over you. So sleep some days and pray tahajjud, pray at night some other days. Your body has rights over you. So giving it enough sleep is a responsibility and obligation of ours. So we need to do that. Now, Ibn Qayyim makes some suggestions. Right? The Prophet ﷺ had sleeping habits, and that is he would sleep half of the night, wake up for a third, doing tahajjud, and then take a quick nap for the last sixth of the night. Now, for us, I don't think that's possible. Right? Why? Because back then they would sleep immediately after Isha prayer. So today we would be talking about 8 o'clock they're in bed. Why? Because they didn't, they were following the sun, not time. They don't have electricity. We really can't do that. By 8 o'clock, we barely got home and had our meal, and now we're spending time with our family. So if we go back to sleep after doing tahajjud, we're probably not going to wake up for Fajr. And that destroys the entire point. So the Prophet ﷺ would sleep half the night, wake up for a third, sleep the final sixth of the night. And then it was common practice that the Arabs would take a nap at noontime. That was probably because at noontime it's the hottest, and since they don't have an abundant supply of water, sweating would cause them to become dehydrated. So in those hours, the hot hours of the day, they'd go home and sleep to reduce the amount they sweat, probably for that reason. But there's nothing wrong with utilizing that time or making that a type of habit of ours. Times that we shouldn't sleep, the Prophet ﷺ disliked sleeping between Maghrib and Isha. Why? Because, again, back in the day, they've been working since sunrise. And if they go to sleep after Maghrib prayer, they're not going to wake up for Isha. They're dead asleep, they're sound asleep. So they're going to miss Isha in the jama'ah, in the congregation, at least, right? So the Prophet ﷺ disliked, it's makruh, it's disliked to sleep in that time. Ibn Qayyim says that we shouldn't sleep after Fajr prayer. From Fajr till around noon, that is a time of barakah, time of blessings. This is when the arzaq is coming down. This is when provisions is coming down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, I think we fail in that. At least I'm guilty of that. I try to give myself excuses. My baby is, he kind of makes it a little bit harder for me and whatnot. But it's something that I think we should make a habit, because that time is a very quiet time. No one's there. Spouse is probably at work, kids are at school or they're gone, and it's all yours, baby. That's a fun time. So utilize that time. Wallahu ta'ala alam. With that, we conclude the station of Tadhakur and Tafakkur, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow it to allow us to benefit from it and make us among the mutafakkirin and al-mutadhakkirin. Ameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.